Welcome to Pastor Andrew's Inspirations. If you enjoy these videos, please click on the red subscribe button below and the bell for more. Welcome to our online church, a congregation made up of many from around the world. No offering is necessary. Subscribing and watching videos will keep us alive under God's watchful eyes. Today, we will be talking about the biblical ancient kingdom of Edom. Edom was an ancient kingdom in Transjordan, located between Moab to the northeast, the Arabah to the west, and the Arabian Desert to the south and east. Most of its former territory is now divided between southern Israel and Jordan. Edom emerges in written sources linking to the late Bronze Age and to the Iron Age in the Levant. Edomites are linked in several ancient sources, including the Tanakh. A list of the Egyptian pharaoh Seti I from 1215 BC, as well as in the chronicle of a campaign by Ramesses III, 1186 to 1155 BC. The nation flourished between the 13th and the 8th century BC. It was destroyed after a period of decline in the 6th century BC by the Babylonians. The Edomites were pushed westward towards southern Judah by nomadic tribes coming from the east. Among them were the Nabateans, who first appeared in the historical annals of the 4th century BC. They established their own kingdom in what used to be Edom by the first half of the 2nd century BC. The process of Edomite settlement in the southern parts of the kingdom of Judah and parts of the Negev down to Timnah had started already before the destruction of the kingdom, both by peaceful infiltration and by military means. Taking advantage of the already weakened state of Judah, once pushed out of their territory, the Edomites settled in an area comprising the southern hills of Judea, down to the area north of Beersheba. They appear under a Greek form of their old name as Idumeans, and their new territory was called Idumea, a term that was used in New Testament times. The Hebrew word Edom means red. The Hebrew Bible relates it to the name of its founder, Esau, elder son of the Hebrew patriarch Isaac, because he was born red all over. As a young adult, he sold his birthright to his brother Jacob for red pottage. The Tanakh describes the Edomites as descendants of Esau. The Edomites may have related to the Shasu and Shutu, nomadic raiders mentioned in Egyptian sources. A letter from an Egyptian scribe at a border fortress in the Wadi Tumilat reports movement of nomadic Shasu tribes of Edom to watering holes in Egyptian territory. The earliest Iron Age settlements date to the 9th century BC. Settlement intensified by the late 8th century BC. The main sites so far excavated have been dated between the 8th and 6th centuries BC. The last clear-cut reference to Edom is an Assyrian inscription of 667 BC. It has thus been unclear when, how, and why Edom ceased to exist as a state. Edom is mentioned in Assyrian cuneiform inscriptions in the forms of Udumi and Udumu. 3 of its kings are known from the same source. Kas Malacca at the time of Tiglath-Pileser III, 745 BC. Melik Ramu at the time of Sennacherib, 705 BC. And Kas Gabri at the time of Esarhaddon, 680 BC. The Edoma at times extended their possessions to the borders of Egypt. After the conquest of Judah by the Babylonians, Edomites settled in the region of Hebron. They prospered in the new country, called by the Greeks and Romans Idumea, for over 4 centuries. The Idumeans of Nabatean origin constituted the majority of the population of western Judea. They commingled with the Judeans and adopted their customs. The existence of the kingdom of Edom was asserted by archaeologists by using a methodology called the punctuated equilibrium model in 2019. They mainly took copper samples from Timna Valley and Fanon in Jordan's Araba Valley dated to 1300 to 800 BC. The researchers thought that Pharaoh Shishak I of Egypt, the one who attacked Jerusalem in the 10th century BC, boosted the trade and production of copper instead of destroying the region. The Edomites their original country, according to the Hebrew Bible, stretched from the Sinai Peninsula as far as Kadesh Barnea. It reached as far as south as Elat, which was the seaport of Edom. On the north of Edom was the territory of Moab. The boundary between Moab and Edom was the brook of Zered. The ancient capital of Edom was Bozrah. According to Genesis, Esau's descendants settled in the land after they had displaced the Horites. It was also called the land of Seir. Mount Seir was strongly identified with them and may have been a cultic site. According to the Bible narrative, at the time of Amaziah 838 BC, Selah was its principal stronghold, Elat and Ezion-Geber its seaports. Genesis 36 lists the kings of Edom. These are the kings who ruled in the land of Edom before a king ruled the children of Israel. And Bela ben Beor ruled in Edom, and the name of his city was Dinaba. And Bela died, and Jobab ben Zerah from Bozrah ruled in his place. And Jobab died, and Husham of the land of Tamani ruled in his place, and Husham died. And Hadad ben Bedad, who struck Midian in the field of Moab, ruled in his place, and the name of his city was Avith. And Hadad died, and Samlah of Masrekah ruled in his place, and Samlah died. And Saul of Rehoboth on the river ruled in his place, and Saul died. And Baal-Hanan ben Akbor ruled in his place, and Baal-Hanan ben Akbor died. And Hadar ruled in his place, and the name of his city was Pau, and his wife's name was Mehetabel, Bat Matrid Bat Mezab. And these are the names of the clans of Esau by their families, by their places, by their names: Clan Timnah, Clan Alva, Clan Jetheth, Clan Aholibamah, clan Elah, clan Pino, clan Kenaz, clan Teman, clan Mizbar, clan Magdiel, clan Iram. The Hebrew word translated as leader of a clan is aloof, used to describe the dukes of Edom and Moab in the first 5 books of Moses. However, beginning in the books of the later prophets, the word is used to describe Judean generals. In the prophecies of Zechariah, in chapter 9, verse 7, and chapter 12, verses 5 and 6, aluf had evolved to describe Jewish captains. Aluf is used multiple times as a general term for teacher or guide. In Psalm 55, verse 13, for example. Aluf, as it is used to denote teach or guide from the Edomite word for duke, is used 69 times in the Tanakh. If taken at face value, the kingship of Edom was, at least in early times, not hereditary, but perhaps elective. The first book of Chronicles mentions both a king and chieftains. Moses and the Israelite people twice appealed to their common ancestry, asking the king of Edom for passage through his land along the king's highway on their way to Canaan, but the king refused permission. Accordingly, they detoured around the country. Because of his show of force, or because God ordered them to do so rather than wage war, in Deuteronomy chapter 2, verses 4 to 6. The king of Edom did not attack the Israelites, though he prepared to resist aggression. Nothing further is recorded of the Edomites in the Tanakh until their defeat by King Saul of Israel in the late 11th century BC. In 1 Samuel chapter 14, verse 47. 40 years later, King David and his general Joab defeated the Edomites in the Valley of Salt. In 2 Samuel chapter 8, verse 13 and 14, and 1 Kings chapter 9, verses 15 and 16, an Edomite prince named Hadad escaped and fled to Egypt. After David's death, Hadad returned and tried to start a rebellion, but failed and went to Aramea. From that time, Edom remained a vassal of Israel. David placed over the Edomites Israelite governors or prefects. This form of government seems to have continued under Solomon. When Israel divided into 2 kingdoms, Edom became a dependency of the kingdom of Judah. In the time of Jehoshaphat, 870 to 849 BC. The Tanakh mentions the king of Edom, an Israelite deputy appointed by the king of Judah. The inhabitants of Mount Seir invaded Judea in conjunction with Ammon and Moab. The invaders turned against one another and were all destroyed in 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verses 10 to 23. Edom revolted against Jehoram and elected a king of its own. In 2 Kings chapter 8, verses 20 to 22, and 2 Chronicles chapter 21, verse 8. Amaziah attacked and defeated the Edomites, seizing Selah. The Israelites never subdued Edom completely. In 2 Kings chapter 14, verse 7, and 2 Chronicles chapter 25, verses 11 and 12. The Edomites may have helped plunder Jerusalem and slaughter the Judeans. In Psalms 137, verse 7, and Obadiah chapter 1, verses 11 to 14. The prophets denounced Edom in Isaiah chapter 34, verse 5 to 8, and Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 7 to 22. Evidence also suggests that at the time, Edom may have engaged in a treaty betrayal of Judah. Regarding Edom, the book of Jeremiah states that no one will live there, nor will anyone of mankind reside in it. Although the Edomians controlled the lands to the east and south of the Dead Sea, their people were held in contempt by the Israelites. The book of Psalms says, "Moab is my washpot. Over Edom will I cast out my shoe." According to the Torah, the congregation could not receive descendants of a marriage between an Israelite and an Edomite until the 4th generation. This law was a subject of controversy between Shimon ben Yaheh, who said it applied only to male descendants, and other Tanaim, who said female descendants were also excluded for 4 generations. From these, some early conversion laws in Halakha were derived. The nature of Edomite religion is largely unknown before their conversion to Judaism by the Hasmoneans. The national god of Edom was Quas. Since Quas is invoked in the blessing formula in letters and appear in personal names found in ancient Edom. As close relatives of other Levantine Semites, they may have worshipped such gods as El, Baal, Quas, and Asherah. The oldest biblical traditions place Yahweh as the deity of southern Edom, which originated in Edom, Seir, Teman, and Sinai, before being adopted in Israel and Judah. There is a Jewish tradition stemmed from the Talmud that the descendants of Esau would eventually become the Romans, and to a larger extent all Europeans. Josephus states that Costobarus, appointed by Herod to be governor of Idumea and Gaza, was descended from the priests of the Kos, whom the Idumeans had formerly served as a god. The kingdom of Edom drew much of its livelihood from the caravan trade between Egypt, the Levant, Mesopotamia, and southern Arabia, along the incense route, astride the King's Highway. The Edomites were one of several states in the region for whom trade was vital due to scarcity of arable land. It is also said that the sea routes traded as far away as India. Ships leaving from the port of Ezion-Geber. Edom's location on the southern highlands left it with only a small strip of land that received sufficient rain for farming. Edom probably exported salt and balsam used for perfume and temple incense in the ancient world from the Dead Sea region. Kerbat and Nahas is a large-scale copper mining site in what is now southern Jordan. The scale of 10th century mining on the site is regarded as evidence of a strong, centralized 10th century BC Edomite kingdom. This is the biblical ancient kingdom of Edom. Adonai Nisi, the Lord is our banner. God's blessings be upon us all. Amen.